My name is Guyberlie Cinada. I'm a student at Trinity, Washington University, and I'm here with
Rewa Burnham.
This interview is taking place at approximately 1:30 p.m. And just to get started, would you describe when and where you born?
I was born in 1978 in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which is just outside of Alexandria, Virginia. It's the military base.
Okay.
Just outside of Alexandria.
And this is where you also grew up?
I grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, yeah. And also in Maryland.
Okay, that's nice. How would you describe your childhood and teenage years prior to attending college?
Well, I think I had a pretty standard childhood. I went to private school. That was a big deal for my mother. When I was born, when she was pregnant with me, there was a strike. The teachers in Chicago were striking, and it was a pretty extended strike. And it went on for weeks and weeks and weeks, maybe even months. And she said that she watched that and she was filled with anxiety because she thought, oh my gosh, those kids aren't going to school. Whatever's going on with the union and the teachers and the pay, there's a whole community of children who aren't going to school. And she sort of vowed that that wouldn't happen to her daughter. Yeah. So she committed in that moment. She's like, I'm going to send my daughter to private school. But that wasn't something that most people would think was accessible for my mother. I mean, my parents actually divorced while she was pregnant, so she was very much a single mom, and she had a good job, but she had to pay rent and bills, and the idea of adding on tuition, especially at that time, it wasn't like she could get like a tax break or some kind of voucher, but she just was committed to that idea. So she ended up working extra jobs, and at some points she was working like 3 or 4 jobs just to make sure that I could go to a private school. That was really important to her. And so I did. I went to different Catholic schools all the way through high school. I ended up going to Elizabeth Seton High School, which I loved, which was a formative experience for me.
Okay.
So I think that covers that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. Thank you. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
It's so interesting. I wanted to be a lot of things. I was always, so I was one of those kids, I learned how to read really early.
Okay.
And it really, everyone thought it meant something. I'm not sure it meant anything. I think I liked books and I liked reading, and I was an introverted child, so I spent a lot of time by myself, so I kind of figured out how to read. But they were like, oh my gosh, they were really excited by that. Yeah. Oh, she's going to be, I was going to be any great thing because, I had done this. And again, I don't think there was really anything exceptional about me. I think it could have been like athletic skill that I showed, or, you know what I mean?
Anything, yeah.
Yeah, but it was like really impressive to them in that moment.
Yeah.
So there was always high expectation around, what is she going to do? Especially because my mom was investing all this money into my education.
That's true.
So I remember at one point my dad had this friend. She was a doctor, and he wanted me to see a black woman doctor, and he took me to her office to meet her. And after I met her, I decided I wanted to be a cardiologist. I was probably like 6 or 7 years old, right? What do you want to be? A cardiologist, and people were like, do you even know what that is? It's a heart doctor, it was just so, but so that was like one thing I thought I wanted to be. I thought I wanted to be a singer. I thought that I wanted to have a bunch of kids. That was always in the mix. So I always had this really ambitious mind, even when I was little, that all of these things that I wanted to be. But it wasn't until I would say maybe 5th or 6th grade that I had my mind set on, I want to be a writer. I had always sort of, and that I pursued that idea, I think, more than other ideas. But I think by the time I got to high school, I honestly can't remember wanting to be anything. I kind of hit that teenage rebellion pretty hard, and was kind of like, I had always done well in school, and, you know, in high school, it's kind of easy to do well if you've always done well. It never really required a lot of studying or anything on my part, so I just kind of moved on through, and I don't know that I had any particular goal in mind in terms of career.
Okay, but you're currently an English professor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so, okay, I see. Yeah, one of the interesting questions that I think is very important, what brought you to Trinity, and was that your first choice of college?
So, I think sort of picking up on, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I actually, when I got to my senior year, I had it in my mind that I wanted to go to NYU. I have no idea in this moment why, but that was the school I wanted to go to. And or maybe like Georgetown. So I did my regular. I took the PSAT and I got a really high score. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember it was good enough that, not the PSAT. I just took the SAT. Because the PSAT was the one I took before it. But I took the SAT and it went well. And so I was like, oh, I could just go wherever I want to go, like, you know, naively. Yeah. So I filled out my applications and everything sort of went well, but my mother was like, you're not going to NYU. I can't afford that. You can't afford that. You're not going to New York. Where are you going to live? Like, all the practicalities of, like, you can go to NYU. So I don't care what NYU said. you know. I was really bratty about it, and I was like, well, fine, I don't want to go anywhere. You pick where I go, since I had no agency, because I was that kind of kid, you know. I was like, oh, I have no agency? You fine, you pick it. It's up to you. And so, of course, she picked George Mason University because I got, I think, almost like a full ride to go there. And it was the most economically comfortable option for us. It was close by. There was a lot of reasons why. She was like, okay, fine, you go to Mason. Mm-hmm. And I did go to Mason, and she moved me in there, but I just wasn't ready for college. I was just not mature enough for that, for lots of reasons. And, you know, your first year of college, I think every issue you've ever had sort of comes to the forefront. Yeah. Especially because I had gone to private schools and I had gone to Seton, and Elizabeth Seton was this incredibly supportive space. I mean, just therapists, guidance counselors, and even in gym, you know, everybody knows your whole life story and is going to support you. Yeah. So all of that is to say, I'm sorry, I got distracted.
It's okay.
I went to Mason and failed every class my freshman year. I was driving, I had a car. My mother had bought me a car for graduation. And I zipped back and forth and chasing her down a boyfriend, just like everything that, you know, a first year college student is going to do. And failed every class. I didn't even go to the classes, frankly. I was like majoring in like communication, which I sort of randomly picked. And because being a writer wasn't okay, so I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll be like a news person or something, because I felt like
being a writer wasn't okay with your parents.
Yeah, my mother was like, a writer, like, what does that mean? That's not a career. That's not a real job. What do you mean you're gonna be a writer? Like, so I was like, oh, I'll major in communication, because at least that felt like it had a career path attached to it. Whereas, you know, I couldn't articulate what a career path for a writer was. And again, it was just something I sort of vaguely knew I wanted to do. I knew I was a good writer. So anyway, I failed every class, and my mother was devastated, and I lost my funding. And, it was bad, you know. It was like, don't sit at the table with me. I'm not hungry. I don't want to look at you. It was like, really, she was really upset. She had invested a lot in my education, and it felt like I had thrown it away. But of course, you know, they don't make you leave the first semester you fail out. So I went back the next semester and did the same thing, didn't go to class, and I couldn't manage the environment. I mean, I know it now, but then I didn't understand what was wrong with me. just couldn't. It was so different. It's a huge state school, had a huge campus, lots of people. I'd gone to a women's high school, and so I had not been in the classroom, post puberty with boys, and it was weird for me. I felt intimidated by it. There were racial things. It was a racist space. I had not interacted with that before, because even though it was sort of 50-50 black and white, it wasn't really a raced space. I mean, I didn't feel it was. I'm sure it was, but I didn't feel that. Race wasn't something I thought about. But at Mason, I was like black. I was like, I'm super black. Like, and that means something to these people that, I was always proud to be black and okay with that. Against my mother's sort of wishes, that long ago abandoned perms before it was cool. I was always that girl, but I was like, oh my God, this is weird. So I was dealing with that, and I didn't go to school because it wasn't comfortable, because it wasn't like the spaces I had come from. It was too big. It wasn't a good space for me. So I ended up working since I lost my financial aid. So I worked. I got a job. My mother was like, you're going to get a job. You're not going to just sit around here. Like, that's not okay. And so I got a job, and I was like maybe I was living with my dad instead of my mom. But I ended up getting a job across the street at the Cloisters, running apartments. I had like every job. Like it was impressive. I could always get a job and do well at anything I tried. Like, if you teach me how to do it, I can do it. So I was over there renting apartments, and one day on my lunch break, this is probably so much longer than you asked.
No, it's okay. That's perfect. That's perfect.
I was over there, and I came over. I said, oh my God, that place over there is a school. So I went over, and instantly, me, who had gone to Catholic school my whole life, it was a comfortable space for me. It was like, oh, it's a beautiful campus. My job over there was horrible. I was actually being sexually harassed. My boss was, it was like a sitcom. It's funny to me now. I see your face and you're alarmed, and it was alarming at that time. But for me now, I look back on it and I'm just like, oh my God, like the maintenance men were awful and, made me uncomfortable a lot. And my boss was like cuckoo. I'll leave it at that. And so it was a hard place to be, but I didn't feel like I could quit my job, So I would come over here and walk around the campus, and I realized it was a school because I thought it was a church. And I looked it up, and I was like, oh, I can take 2 classes. So I saved up enough money to take 2 classes, and I paid for them out of pocket. I will never forget, it was like a religious studies class. Who is Jesus is what the class was called. It was a religious studies class, and I thought that was good. And then a math class.
Okay.
And I took those 2 classes, and I got 2 A's, and I really loved it. And it was like so much, it was familiar. It was probably more like Seton, the level of engagement and support I was used to. So I was like, oh my God, it would be so cool. I didn't think I could afford it, but I was like, it would be so cool because the part I didn't tell you is that off and on while I had been working, I had been trying to take classes. So I'd taken classes like community college, I'd taken like a class at Strayer, like anywhere I could get classes because I loved school and I knew I still wanted to go to school. So I was just, here and there picking up classes, but working and having to pay for it out of pocket. So every class was this huge mountain, to climb. But I went so things were getting really bad at my job, and I was like, what am I going to do? And so I went to financial aid here just to I was going to apply for more classes. And I think the woman in enrollment services was like, you should take a full semester. And I was like, I can't afford that. And so she was trying to explain to me that it might be cheaper to take a full course load, right? Because I could get financial aid. But I thought at that time, it's probably still this way, you can only get a certain amount of financial aid until you turn, I think it's 25 or 26.
I'm not sure about that option.
Yeah, well, it's because you have to, at that point, the way the FAFSA worked, you have to claim your parents up to a certain point unless you get emancipated from them.
Yeah, it's still the case now.
And so if I claimed my parents' income, I really couldn't get any financial aid. But they weren't supporting me.
Yeah, it's also depends on how much your parents are making.
Exactly.
So
right.
Yeah.
So for me, I didn't qualify because I was still under my parents.
Yeah.
But I think at that point, I was just getting old enough that I didn't have to be. I didn't either that or I did the paperwork and they freed me from them. Either way, I don't remember exactly how it shaped out, but I went to financial aid office and they were like, you should take a full course load. You know what? You can do it. Like, we'll figure it out. And so I was like, I'm just going to do it. I quit my job. I put in my notice. I remember I put in my notice and literally, I know it doesn't seem possible, but it literally happened the next day in the mail. So I don't know if I spoke to them in the morning and then they put the letter in the mail the same day. I have no idea, but it was literally the next day in the mail. I got my acceptance letter and the financial aid letter that meant that I could make it. You know, I could take a full course load. Oh my gosh, I probably still have that award though somewhere in my scrapbook because I was just like, but I had to take that leap. Yeah. I was like, oh, I can do it. And so I was a little bit older than, I wasn't 19. I was like 25, 24, 25.
Okay.
But that was the start. That was how I ended up at Trinity. It was like this weird mix of chance. I worked across the street and also the familiarity of the space because I was like a Catholic schoolgirl.
True. I can totally understand where you're coming from the environment point of view because my whole life I've been in private school as well. So the idea of being in a big environment, I was just like, this is not for me. I don't think I can do well. And I was like, Trinity might be the best option for me. Even though it's a small school, I feel like it would help me to just be me, basically. So, yeah. Another question. Were you the first person in your family to attend college?
So it depends on how you define family. Neither of my parents, they both started college, but neither of them finished.
Okay.
And so I was the first person from that perspective to go to college and complete my degree.
Right.
I have some cousins, but I'm sort of the oldest of a set of cousins, so it makes me the first, even though my generation and our family are pretty much they all sort of went to college, whether they finished or not. So that's a weird answer, but technically I am the first person in my family in my immediate family to get a 4-year degree.
Okay, understood. How would you describe your experience at Trinity overall, or any challenges that you faced as a Black woman or a woman of color at the school?
So my time at Trinity was formative in that first semester I came on campus. I was like sort of nervous because I was a little bit older than everybody, but I felt so old. Like, I feel like in my head I was behind. That's actually what I was talking about earlier, right? I felt like I was behind and I had to hurry up and finish this degree so I could make something of my life.
Sure.
In my mind, everybody is 19, 18, and they're all, I am the old lady, coming. And back then, in my time, I didn't feel like there were tons of students who were older students. Now I feel like it's more diverse in terms of age.
Yes.
Or maybe people are just more open about where they are because I felt like it was like a shameful secret. But at that time when I was there. But the thing about it is you can't really tell my age by looking at me, or at least at that point in my life. You really couldn't. No one was going to come up to me and think I wasn't, 19.
Yeah.
So that's those good genes.
I didn't know.
I didn't know exactly. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to just, So in that way, I made, friends. And then my second year, I got to be an RA. They don't have that anymore. But and when I was at Trinity, you could be an RA. So I applied, it was competitive, and I got it. So what that meant was I could move on campus. I could actually afford to live on campus, which was like my dream. I wanted to live on campus, right? I wanted to have like what I thought was a college experience. So being an RA was so important to my development because I think I've always been a leader in my way, but that was sort of forcing me to formalize that, right? Like, I'm in charge of this floor. I decide what our theme, because back then being an RA meant like we actually spent 2 weeks before school started decorating our floor, making little name tags for everyone. Like we were we felt responsible. Michi was still there, and we felt responsible. Like there was a series of workshops that led up to it that were so important. I remember those workshops so well. Like, and in fact, where is it? I think in here. Oh, there it is. This is a picture of us at one of those RA trainings. That's me there in the middle.
Wow. I don't think I recognize anyone.
I think Michi's there.
She is?
Yeah, there's Michi.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I see.
So they had a mix of RAs. So the RAs in Kirby, my first year, we were students that had competed for those positions. Okay. And then the RAs in Guyberlie, maybe it was the other way around, I can't remember, but some of the RAs were not students. They were like that woman, her and her. They weren't students. They were like graduate students at other places. Okay. Like they were for the freshmen. The freshmen didn't have student RAs. They had these women who were like a little older, because they were freshmen and they probably had more things going on. Sure. But us, everybody else, all of us were students, and you see that the student population was more diverse than
now. Yes.
Like because all of these, everybody there is a student.
Yeah.
And so being an RA, again, it was like formative. Like I felt responsible for my floor. I had to learn how to thread the needle between being a student leader, because again, it meant more. I think living on campus and being accountable for what happens on my floor and having keys and enforcing visitation, pulling, oh gosh, it's going to be so weird to transcribe that, but like uninvited or unauthorized visitors out of closets, unclothed at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
And, those things, with somebody who you gonna have to be in class with and is like your friend. Learning to thread that needle, like leadership really is different when it's like, yeah, you for real my friend, you are somebody I love and respect, but for real I have to enforce these rules, so we gonna have to figure out how to still be friends and still enforce these rules. That's a different way. I mean, to me it's a more authentic way of leadership, and it's still how I lead. It's still how I run my classroom. I always say, in this classroom we are a family. This is what we're doing. We are accountable for each other. Yes. I'm also accountable. Yep. And that's a different, that's the type of relationship I like to have with my students. I prefer I always call it the big sister model to the authoritarian, sage on the stage model. And I learned that here. I learned that in this context of sisterhood. All my Trinity friends are still my friends. They're still people that I just had book club last night with someone who was my Trinity friend I met in my sophomore year here. Yeah. Everybody in this picture, I think may not have been close friends with, but like
you're still in contact.
I was good close friends with Jean and Philonda, and those are people I still sort of regularly, we're social media friends at the very least, but a little more. And Kate, and I mean, that was the environment. And I think that a lot of things fostered that environment. Being a campus leader in that way. And the other thing is RAs, we were responsible for 2 programs a semester, each of us. So then, like, learning how to get out and rally, like, you know how now people have events and no one comes?
Yeah.
Back then, it's like, nah, for real, y'all. I'm planning this poetry thing, and y'all gonna come. So, what we gonna do? What time we eating dinner? Because we gonna walk over together. Like, again, that's a different type of, that's a leadership model that I learned here that I don't think comes naturally to everybody. And that's been some of the most valuable experiences. Some of my most formative experiences happened on this campus.
Yeah, I think the community in general, it really changed. Because I've heard some other experiences, or even before COVID happened, how everybody used to be together and how the campus used to come together for events. But now it's just, I don't know, it's probably because of COVID.
I think that there has been a gradual erosion of that type of community, but I do think that COVID was like the nail in the coffin, because everybody just ended up building like these lives outside of their campus life, and then now the campus life feels almost intrusive. And it's unfortunate.
I think you kind of described the relationship you had with some of the students, and a little bit goes into like the administration, but would you describe any like relationship, or would you go more into depth about that, like the relationship between you and your classmates or any students from Trinity or the faculties or administration?
Well, the other thing I think that was formative, like I talked a lot about the like what it meant to be an RA and what those relationships were like, but I mean the most formative experiences were in the classroom. My teachers were like, I remember, Dr. San Juan retired years ago, maybe 6 years ago or something. But I remember being in her class, and she taught philosophy, and she was like almost a stereotype of a philosophy teacher. She looked like Mother Earth or something. I mean, not to be. But she just, something about her was very wholesome and maternal, and long, flowy, messy hair, right? But also not playing with you. Like, no, for real, we gonna read Kant. So get out your book. It's like, Dr. San Juan, I don't even know if this is in English. Oh, honey, she's so sweet. Oh, honey, it's fine. Let's read it together. And then these texts that seemed impenetrable to me, impossible to me. She would just sit up there and act them out, and then force us all to talk. She'd sit up there in the classroom on her desk, and I still, and like just like her, I now sit on my desk, and just point to us, and okay, what does that mean? And in her class, there were no deadlines. You had to write 6 papers, right? These 6 response papers, but you turn them in when you want. And I remember being like, can you please give me a deadline? No,
I do need a deadline as well.
Turn it in when you're ready. And I remember I got to the end. I'm a good writer, right? Got to the end of that semester. I had 6 papers due, and I was like, can I have an extension? And she was like, no. And I did it. It was, taking Dr. Child's English class the first time in my junior year, thinking I was going to be, I had a major they don't even offer anymore, public affairs, which was a mix of poli-sci and econ, because I thought I wanted to go to law school to be a family law lawyer. And then I took Dr. Child's introduction to British literature, and I was like, oh my God, because remember a long time ago I thought I wanted to be a writer, and I loved that English class, and I managed to fit an entire English major in my last 2 years. I started the English major my junior year and finished it, and then went to grad school in English because that was what I decided I loved. Or taking Dr. Harris O'Brien's course. Debbie Harris O'Brien is actually the best teacher I've ever had in my life, and I've told her that. I remember she taught me adolescent psychology, and it was a gen ed. Back then, our gen ed was a lot less structured. So you basically just took class in every discipline. It was like called the FLC, and there was some kind of structure, but basically you could just take what you wanted to a certain extent. And I remember taking adolescent psychology, and I could probably, that woman could give me that adolescent psychology exam today, I would probably get an A. Like, I had never experienced something where I was like, I learned in like the deep part of my brain, every single thing she taught me. And it's actually been a really informative class for me because I teach college students. And so understanding the adolescent brain is really helpful for me.
That's true.
So I say all this to say, like, the teachers I had, but I think the biggest thing that they gave me was confidence. Like, I'd always been kind of good at school, and so, but I had never learned how to work hard because I was always good at school.
True.
And so, and then things that I wasn't naturally inclined to, I didn't even want to do them. I was like, oh, well, the heck with math.
This is not for you.
I'll just take 27 English classes instead.
Yeah.
But I think that this was a space where I'll just tell you, when I went to the University of Maryland College Park, and I chose it because it was the school I wanted, even though other schools, for grad school, other schools had offered me money.
Yeah.
Maryland didn't. And I was like, but Maryland is the best school. Like, for African American literature, it was in the top 10, and I wanted it. And so I took, maybe foolishly, but I was like, I'm going to that school. They accepted me and they didn't give me money. I'll figure it out. And I remember going to my teachers that first year because I had gone to Trinity, and so I just go talk to my teachers.
Yeah.
And I just went on to my teachers and was like, did you like that paper? Oh, it was a free paper. I was like, I don't have any funding. What's up with that? And by my second semester, I had funding. And I remember one of my teachers...
advocate for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't even know I was supposed to be scared of talking to teachers. I remember my classmates being like, wait, you went to his office? I was like, yeah. Like, where was I supposed to meet him,
Yeah.
Like, all these weird walls that they had internalized between them and their professors I didn't have. I didn't even know what they were talking about.
I know you talk about you being a leader at Trinity, but did you ever had somebody to look up to, like a role model that you had at Trinity? And if you did, who, if you feel comfortable sharing, who was that person and what did they do to you to improve your personal growth or academic growth?
Well, I think everybody, I know it sounds so cheesy, but my teachers were really important as a unit. I'm trying to sort of pick out one person. Kathleen McGinnis, who taught political science, was the first person to tell me, because I was telling her I was going to go to law school or something. And she said, you're going to hate law school. You don't need that. You have, I don't remember how she put it, but it was something like, something about the fact that I needed to go to grad school and that I had a humanities sensibility. And she said it in a way that was really, that hit home for me. Like, oh. So I started looking at different types of programs. And then, Dr. Elizabeth Child, Liza said to me once when I was meeting with her, I was looking into like creative writing programs, and I remember her saying, you don't want to do that. You want to study literature, you're good at that, you like that, you'll be able to find a job in that, and if you want to write later, you can, And so there are just all those little types of moments where people took interest in me. Dr. Parsons, who's not here anymore, but, her just being like, woman, you're so smart, you gotta go to grad school. Just these, like, sort of casual aside things that always were moving me in the direction that was really my path. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
not that they were telling me what to do.
True.
It was
Yeah.
it was natural. You know, grad school was a sort of natural extension of who I was, but I just didn't know that yet, if that made sense. So I don't think I did a good job answering the question. But
No, it's okay. You did great. You did great. Yeah. Just to follow up with that question, is there like any memorable advice that you've gotten from any of like professors from Trinity or any students, classmates?
I just feel like I saw so many models for how to be in the world in this space. I feel like we were all so comfortable and able to be our authentic selves in this space in a way that is really hard to get in academia and other environments, man. It's so hard. Everybody is always performing, but here it wasn't like that. So in terms of the models I saw models of how to be your authentic self, which is the most important thing. I mean, for me anyway, that, you know, being yourself all the time in all environments is really important. And I learned how to do that here, even though that's not a specific sort of, you know, all the women here, all of the leaders here were women that I interacted with.
Yes.
That mattered. It had never occurred to me that I couldn't do something because I was a woman. Never even occurred to me.
Okay. Can you tell me about historical moments that occurred at Trinity that emotionally moved you or in your life in general, like, or yeah, during your career?
You mean like, I'm not sure what you mean.
Something that happened to you, either at Trinity or during your career, that emotionally moved you. Something impactful.
Well, I will say that we don't have class traditions anymore, but in my time we did. We took our class colors very seriously, and in fact, the class presidents had to guard the class flag. So when you came in, your sister class made your class a flag, and they presented it to you.
Okay.
Right? Like, oh, here's your class flag. And the class president was responsible for keeping up with the class flag. But other classes would try to steal the flag. So like, because we used to hang out, like, you know, like sometimes you leave your dorm room open or you go in and out, like it was like really community oriented. So either you would hide that flag, or maybe it was even somebody you know come in your room with the flag is unguarded, take your flag, then like make you do things to get it back, make your whole class do things to get it back.
That sounds fun.
Oh, it was so fun. It was hilarious. Fun, and, you know, oh, y'all better be ready to jog because everybody's gonna have to lap me if they want this flag back. And people always do that like before a ceremony, like where you were supposed to have your flag. So it was like, we need it. Like our ring ceremony is coming. Like stop playing. And we would have well sings still. We were at the end of the well sing tradition that would end shortly after us, where at holidays, you know, we would by class we would be in the hall of the well, and so senior year you got to sit at the bottom, but you know every year you got to come down the level and then sing carols and throw confetti or garland and stuff down on the seniors. We had class like days where like ours was, you know, I love you blue class, like yes we do, love you blue class, it will be true, and sing those songs like outside, like at Maypole. Do we still do Maypole? I don't think we do that anymore.
I don't think so.
Like at field day.
Maybe.
Each class was on a different side out of court and singing back and forth and dressing in class colors and putting on our like class war paint on our faces. It was so much fun and it was so moving. Like it really meant something when you got to sit at the bottom of the well and your little sisters, like, I don't even think we do big sister, little sister anymore, but your little sisters would throw stuff down on you, you know, like, it was like the senior countdown. It means, like, it meant so much to us because, you know, like, our little sisters would make us stuff, and I mean, and I'm talking like handmade stuff, not like, you know, it was like, I still have like pictures of that, and I mean, even thinking of it now, it was just so great. You know, it was moving. Like, it made, like, senior year, you know, you really felt like, or cap and gown. We used to have cap and gown tradition, where, you know, it was a Trinity tradition. Because, you know, back in the way back, they had a dress code for how they had to dress. But if you were a senior, one of the ways you could skip over dress code is you were allowed to wear your cap and gown to school instead. And so the big privilege for seniors was that they like had on shorts and a t-shirt, but they put their cap and gown on over it and the dress code. And so then you would see the seniors walking around in cap and gown. So I remember our class. I remember I was like our speaker at cap and gown, actually, that ceremony. And I remember like trying to get everybody to like tap into that tradition again. I was like, we should be wearing our cap and gown to get through senior year. I think Sister Hayes has like a copy of my cap and gown speech, and like she, you know, she has a folder on all of us.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, those traditions were like so awesome, and it's really sad to me that we don't do them anymore.
Yes, we don't, and I wish it was different, but I feel like it's the students as well. We're not as we're not really diverse, but like the diversity in the school, it's not one. We doesn't come on as one sister, because this is a sisterhood and we should take advantage of that, but we're actually isolating ourselves by grouping. So
I know, and it's odd though, because I feel like my class was more diverse, you know, like, but
it's still one spirit.
But I don't know what it is. I don't know what the I think it's because everybody works and nobody's coming to campus. Because we were here together all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, we were, but, you know, I don't know. We used to even, like when we lived in Guyberlie, and this, here I am putting this on tape. Never mind, I'm not gonna. I'll tell you when we cut that off.
Okay. That's okay.
Well, I can tell you, we used to, for whatever reason, if someone stayed out all night, for whatever reason, we would, those of us who had rooms on the front, we would see them getting dropped off. And so we would tell, and so when that person came up to their floor, all of us would be in the hallway class.
It's like, we know.
So funny. So then everybody would like be trying to sneak in. We'd be like, oh, no.
Oh, that sounds fun. Okay, well, I think this is a really important question. What does the world need to know about Trinity? I know Trinity, it's not really known. I guess I can say that.
Yeah.
So what do you want people or the world to know about Trinity and the Trinity alumni?
So when you say about Trinity, do you mean Trinity now, or?
I guess yeah, because it's yeah, I'll say now.
What does the world need to know about Trinity?
Or you can just give a general
Well,
point.
you know, I put it like this, you know. Black people have been leading the revolution in this country since the beginning. Been this huge force of change. People of color have in so many ways ushered this country into modernity and into humanity. and into, working on it still, right? Not there yet, but into a more humane society. We're not there, but I think that any progress we have made has been because of women of color, because of Black women. And so spaces where women of color are growing into their activism and growing into their selves and growing into their big brains and learning to love themselves and learning how to teach other people to love themselves are spaces that everybody needs to watch, because that's where the next leader is coming from. That's where the next wave of feminism, the next wave of womanism, the next wave of kindness that is going to transform society and usher it just a little bit closer to being a space that we can all be proud of. Like that momentum is coming out of Trinity. It's coming out of spaces where women of color are growing and learning.
Yeah, and I think that was beautifully said. And I think since Trinity is like one of there are barely any all-girls schools anymore. So Trinity is like one of the few.
Yeah.
So yeah. What is something you were involved in that others may not know about, which made a profound difference in other people's lives?
Was something that I was involved in, like when I was at Trinity?
I guess you can say that, or you can just give a general point of view as well.
Wait, ask the question again. What is something I'm involved in that others may not?
So the question was, what is something you were involved in and that others may not know about, which you made a profound difference in other people's lives? I guess just keep it simple. We can just do while we were at Trinity.
So my purpose, the thing that I do that is the world-changing thing that I do is I'm a teacher. I came to this world a teacher. They pictures of me, 5 years old, all my stuffed animals lined up, and I, it's just my spirit. And when I was at Trinity, I worked in the writing center, and I am really proud of the work I did there. And when I went to University of Maryland, that was my first job in the writing center, and everything I had learned at Trinity's writing center, I was able to apply it, because writing is a space where people really stress. It's like every anxiety, every depression, every sad thought, everything. That's why people don't like to write, because they don't like to spend that type of intimate time with themselves.
Yeah.
And so being a writing center person means that you can sit with them in that space, which is not a comfortable space for them, and make it just comfortable enough for them to get through, to have some kind of breakthrough, to make a plan, to get through the assignment. And so I think that that's some of the work that I did as a student. That was the most important work that I did that helped the most people, because I was really good at that. And I still think the most important work I do, besides being a parent to my son, is in the classroom.
Yeah.
The books I choose, the conversations I have, the comments I make, all of those things are the things that are going back to the other comment I made about this is the space where Black women are becoming. That's the work. That's my little, it's like a little paintbrush feather on a beach. Each time it's pushing us closer.
Yeah. The thing you say about struggling to write, like I'm not really a writer. I don't really like to write, but when it comes about me writing about myself, I do it because I have a hard time communicating with people about just me in general. So writing about myself, this is something I do. But just in but just for essays and stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, no. What was life's biggest obstacle for you, or did your Trinity sisters or mentors provide, support during that moment?
Oh no. Really not sure how to answer that. I think that getting through grad school was really hard for me. Not because the work was hard, but because the environment, it was just hard. Like grad school was weird and repetitive in this weird way, and it's constant papers back to back, and so much to read. And there were times when I was like, am I good at this? Do I like this? And I remember, my mom, nobody in my family had ever gone to grad school. And I think about year 6 or so, my mother was like, are you good at this? Why are you still doing this? Are you good at it? Like, what's happening? Because, they didn't know, shouldn't this be over by now, And did you really get a degree? Because, I got my master's degree and I didn't even go to the graduation ceremony because I knew I was working on my PhD, so I was just going to wait for that. And I just remember her being like, I ain't never heard nobody getting a degree and not going to the graduation, So that was hard. And I will say I was connected to Trinity all throughout. I adjuncted a class and I could come here and talk to my old professors and sort of get that little boost of confidence that I needed to keep at it, and I was working here. I worked here as an academic advisor when I was writing my dissertation. So, being in this supportive space while I was doing that was helpful.
That's nice. That's good to hear. What are some accomplishments for your personal life or even professional life that you're proud of?
I'm proud of coming back here and teaching, doing exactly what I said I was going to do. I left here, I was like, I'm going to be an English professor.
Yeah, you did it.
I did it, right. I did it. I'm proud to have built a life that I love. I know that sounds so simple, but it is not. So many people work so hard and they never get to benefit from their hard work. It's such an enormous privilege to be able to benefit from your own hard work in a real way.
Yeah.
That just a life where I am happy and I get to do something that I love, and I get to build a comfortable life for my child. It's
based on your answer, so what advice would you give current or future students at Trinity?
My advice is always about being authentic, is being your true self in every environment, because when you are authentic, you give other people permission to be authentic. Bring your full self to the table. I'm always telling my students, and anyone who will listen to me really, we are the ones, or like June Jordan says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. And what I think June Jordan means when she says that is that, I'll take your major is biochemistry. For, all these years, that, I'm just going to be really real with you. White men been studying white men to tell us about health, right? This is how this medicine works, and this is right? White men are studying white men. Our perspectives are what's missing. Our bodies are what's missing. Our problems, our philosophies, our ideas are the creative force. Everything is stagnant and stale. They need us. They need our authentic selves. They don't need our pretending to be themselves. They don't need those perspectives. They have them. They've had them for a long time, and where is it getting them? I'm not sure. Maybe it's getting them really far, but our creative energy, our authentic selves, the way that we wear our hair, the way that we speak, all of those things are the creative, are the energy. You know, W.E. Du Bois talks about, in Of Our Spiritual Strivings, he writes that, you know, Black people's biggest contribution to the nation is spirit. And when you really think about that, it's like, dang, that's our contribution? Wow, spirit, you know, like, that's our energy. Us, our whole selves.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I went all the way around the block with that. But I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
That being yourself is not something to be afraid of. It's what's needed. Why is it that all of the, you know, every community is appropriating, you know, our culture, people of color's culture?
Yeah.
Because our spirit, our energy, that's the creative force. That's what's missing. Don't put it away.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, I guess I could ask this question just to a summary of what you would hope for Trinity. What do you hope for Trinity to achieve, and let's say put a timing into it, about 50 years from now? Or do you actually think Trinity would grow as a community, or like expand, or is it going to just die?
It's a hard question because the higher education landscape right now is really jacked. Things are not looking great for small liberal arts institutions.
Yeah.
I mean, honest, right? But rather than dwell on that, you know, I would like to imagine otherwise and say that, you know, it is my hope that Trinity will grow, would expand, will reach more women of color, and help them and move them, usher them closer into, you know, their fullness. That's what I want. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, great. So this is my last question for you. What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind, and what do you hope people would remember you as?
I don't know. Late and made reading fun? I don't know. I don't know.
Or this can be a general perspective, because
I get the question.
Yeah.
It's actually my everyday, you know, my legacy is still, you know, still, I'm comfortable saying I'm still figuring it out, you know. I still have some years ahead of me. I want people to know that. I most value when my students come up to me and tell me, oh my God, I still remember when we read XYZ. It made me really rethink. And so often this happens. We read that book and it really made me rethink my relationship with my mom, or it really made me think about, you know, how I was moving in that relationship with my boyfriend, and it made me change my mind about, you know, or it made me start revising my work before I send it out, or, you know what I mean? Like that type of, that's what's important to me, to be that teacher. You know, I don't have to be the only important teacher, but to at least one thing that, you know, because I get to cheat a little bit because I'm an English professor, so it's like we're reading great books. It's not me, you know what I mean? It's Toni Morrison, you know. It's not me. It's Edwidge Donicott, but you know, that I can be the person who introduces students to a work that is actually meaningful and transformative. That's what I want.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for your time. This was great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for your time. This was great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.